Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports, where we care what Americans think and not at all what the media thinks. And it seems like a lot of people don't care what the media thinks anymore. It's kind of stunning to witness the slow motion train wreck as what we've been warning for years and years has finally come to fruition. The media has completely destroyed its credibility, and they realize they no longer have control over the will of the voters, at least not as much as they had before. And that's a really important thing for American voters because, as we've seen in the last couple of days, it looks like voters might be in store for a lot of things that they've been wanting for years and years and have never gotten out of government. But what is also interesting to see is the amount of vitriol and blame flying around right now, and not a lot of introspection, definitely blame and finger pointing. But we're going to get into who voters blame for Kamala Harris's stunning defeat last week. Before we get to the numbers, though, there's some really important things to cover. First off, pretty much everybody's seen this already, but if you haven't, you should go check it out. Almost 14 million people. It's flying around Twitter. Alex Jones and InfoWars was gracious enough to host me yesterday, giving me a half hour of time to talk about the ramifications of the Trump win. And there's a lot of really fascinating and important stuff there, like why didn't the Republicans do better down ballot? What's going to happen to the true adherence to the leftism cult as people are starting to wake up and the few remaining folks are going to become more and more radicalized? That could be a problem over the next couple of years as well. But finally, the biggest one is election integrity. And I won't get into all the details here because this is going to YouTube, but go check it out. I think we really dodged a bullet last week. And I don't think Republicans or Trump voters can count on luck to carry through another election. What really needs to happen is a nationwide election integrity commission, or in my opinion, an election fraud jihad. It could be the most important thing that Trump does with his administration. Now, I also put up this really important chart. I covered it a little bit in the video yesterday, looking into the bias in 538. But if you haven't seen it yet, go check out the other video. The point is, this blue line here is the actual battleground state results according to the vote count so far. This purple line is Rasmussen reports. And because we're a pollster and because polls have polling error, it's hard to nail everything, but listen, every single one of these is within the margin of error except for Arizona. And we did have, I think, at least one state poll within the margin of error there. But the point is that there's no bias. Or if you're not really good at reading charts, the purple line is closest to the blue line, and it could have been even better had we had more time, more budget, more people. But the axiom of polling is that the bigger the budget, the more the left bias. And that plays out here too, because Real Clear Politics simply aggregates the industry polls into an average. And you can see that that actually smooths out the polling error. The shape of the yellow line is pretty close to the blue line, except it's 1 to 3 points left because the entire industry is biased to Democrats. And then 538, with their massive team and their massive budget and their statistical models attempting to correct for the inherent bias of pollsters, actually inserted more bias. Weird. And this chart is the same thing, but instead of final polls, this is the middle of September, when really the media was shilling hard for Democrats. Now, we were leaning more to the left in September, but still the closest to the blue line. And listen, we were nailing some of those states. And I knew we had a problem with our Rust Belt polling. I actually did a lot better in October there. But again, the point is, look at the yellow and the teal lines. Real Clear Politics, again, the entire industry leans left, and the teal line, 538, is more to the left. But that little difference is actually really huge, because if you look at Real Clear Politics, this shows Nevada is a toss-up, Pennsylvania is a toss-up, and Michigan and Wisconsin going for Harris. But 538 shows the entire Rust Belt comfortably going for Harris. Pretty big difference in the maps. It's actually the difference between Trump winning or not. Isn't that weird? It's almost like 538 inserts just enough bias that they need to show Harris winning. And here's their massive team. All of these people, all of this money that Disney and ABC are putting into Democrat propaganda. Now, a lot of fun things happening since the election. The first thing is, look at this. This could be people upset. Maybe MSNBC didn't shill for Democrats harder. Or it could be people waking up to the fact, the reality that they've been lied to for years and years. But across the board, every single MSNBC host has massively reduced ratings. And we have yet to see if there's true introspection here. I don't really watch MSNBC. I don't think they've completely come clean. And I'm sure a lot of these viewers are going to come rushing back, but not all of them. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Here's some more fun stuff. Many in government are worried about Trump's return. At the DOJ, they're absolutely terrified because Trump blames the DOJ for much of his torment over the past 4 years. Voters think that the DOJ was engaged in a political persecution of Donald Trump. A collective sense of dread has taken hold at the Department of Justice, which drew Donald Trump's rage like no other part of the federal government. This is across the board. The government can expect a reckoning now because there's a new sheriff in town. Then there's this. I think this is an important consideration. Rasmussen, we called the Trump result, but Republicans stalled down ticket. This is a very important point, one that I think Republicans should be asking themselves every day for the next 4 years. And the answer is not entirely fraud. If the entire country moves 7% to the right, 7% of 435 is 30 seats. Why didn't the Republicans get 30 seats? Why do incumbents have such an advantage? Why were there so few House flips? Why were the entire Rust Belt Senate polls so tied, and yet only one of them pulled it out, even though Donald Trump outperformed the polling? Why do time and time again the Democrats have an insurmountable advantage in battleground turnout? These are questions, the answers to which need to be determined between the election and cycle. The popular vote went from Biden 4.5 to Trump 2, 6.5 points. The battleground polling went from tied to roughly on average 2, only 2 points to the right. Why did that happen? Here's some other histrionics. Left-wing conspiracy theories now claim that Elon Musk used satellites to steal the U.S. election. I'm not going to go into all this, but basically they think that Starlink was flipping votes. This is incredible because they were ridiculing people 4 years ago who had similar concerns. And I think the end result of this is that overall, the trust in elections is going to decrease because now Democrats have a lot less trust in elections. We'll have to see where this goes. And now, yes, some blame. And James Carville, he's a pretty astute guy. He's been around a long time. He's seen the left before it got insane. Veteran Democrat strategist James Carville describes Democratic operatives and leadership as arrogant. We told you this identity crap was a disaster. We told you to get out in front of public safety, and you didn't. We told you to have an open process, and you didn't. Voters actually wanted an open process too, and we're going to get into that. In July, President Joe Biden announced that he would not run for re-election. How likely is it that Biden would have been re-elected if he had run for re-election? So would he have won? Very few voters say yes. 25% say likely. Only 11% say very likely. 40% say not at all likely. And it's pretty flat on gender and age, although only 65% of 65 and older voters say very likely, probably because they're sensitive to the age issue. Black voters are most likely to think he would have won, but it's only 45% of them, 21% say very likely, and Democrats are very close to that. Only 20% of Democrats think that Biden would have been very likely to win if he had stayed in. Of course, Republicans don't at all. 57% say not at all likely, and independents pretty much agree. Even Biden's strong approvers, there is a majority of them who say likely, but only 32% say very likely, a combined total of 57%. Pretty weak majority, although only 33% say not likely. But these are people that look at his performance over the last 4 years and say, yeah, he's doing an excellent job. But they only tepidly say he would have won. Would it have been better for the Democratic Party if Biden had announced last year that he would not run for re-election so that Democrats could have had a primary campaign this year to choose their presidential candidate? 61% of voters say yes. Only 19% say no. Pretty flat. Like everybody agrees here. Pretty incredible. Democrats, 69% say yes. So Democrat voters are saying that it would have been better if Biden had stepped down. That is very important. Only 16% of them say no. And Republicans say yes by a less amount. So I think there's like some aspect here of Republicans acknowledge he wasn't the best candidate, but they also wanted to win. And really, independents agree with Republicans at 57%. So 69%. Democrats are upset they lost, and they're starting to blame it on Biden. And the final question, who deserves more blame for Democrats losing this year's election? Here's the finger pointing. Joe Biden or Kamala Harris? 43% say Harris, only 26% say Joe Biden. So that's fascinating. They say by a majority that it would have been better if Joe Biden stepped down sooner. And yet they are blaming her for losing and not Joe Biden. Nancy Pelosi, take a look at this. And younger voters blame Biden most, 30% to 41%. Actually, it's the same with middle-aged voters. So it's really the 65 and older crew who are standing out here. And most of them are blaming Harris, 49%. Democrats, a huge not sure. Maybe they're just not ready to have these tough conversations yet. 33% blame Biden, only 27% blame Kamala Harris. They really went for Kamala. She did not have very good Democrat Party favorability numbers until she entered the race. And then it shot up into the stratosphere, just like Joe Biden. And so they were put through the ringer. They were told to believe all of a sudden that she's one of the best Democrat candidates that they've ever had. And obviously she wasn't because she lost. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if their opinions change here. But Republicans overwhelmingly blame Kamala Harris, 57% to 25%. She was the candidate, and independents blame her less, 47% to 21%. So really it looks like Joe Biden at this point is kind of getting off scot-free. That's pretty fascinating. I mean, I'm pretty sure what time will tell is that these numbers will widen. She didn't have much time, but she had $1 billion in the full force of the Democrat Party. And man, this is funny. People with incomes over 200K, pretty strong blame going to Biden here. They're a lot less not sure. 40% Biden, 46% Kamala Harris. And everybody else, it's the other way. I mean, they still blame Harris most, but they give Joe Biden a lot less benefit of the doubt. What about graduate schools? No, they're different. So it's really just upper incomes. Interesting. Biden approvers. Biden approvers, on the other hand, the strong approves. When you see a 50% not sure number, that's cognitive dissonance. 31% of them think, these are Biden's strong approvers, 31% of them think that Joe Biden deserved the blame. And only 18% say Kamala Harris. So they do approve strongly of Joe Biden, but they're saying it's his fault. That's because they were literally contorted, gaslit into shifting this massive allegiance to Kamala Harris. I wish we had Harris approval numbers in the same poll. I think it would be really telling. People who voted for Kamala Harris blame, this is just like the Biden strong approvers. People who voted for Kamala Harris blame Joe Biden slightly more, 32 to 20%. Trump voters blame Harris, 62 to 23. This is fascinating. People who think it is very likely that Joe Biden would have won also blame him more than anyone else in this question for losing. 31% say Harris, 42% say Joe Biden. So really, Joe Biden is getting the blame because they like him and they wanted him to stay in. Interesting. So yeah, this is interesting. She's getting more blame than Biden here. And a lot of Biden's blame is coming from people who actually wanted him to stay in. This is not bode well for her legacy. Joe Biden's probably really smiling right now. Well, there you have it, folks. That's the first of our post-election polling. We're going to have a lot more coming in. New questions going into the field today. If you get there fast, go to Mark_R_Mitchell and might have an opportunity to post some ideas. I'll put a tweet out about it. Things are really starting to heat up. The news is almost moving too fast for us to keep track of. We've already had a whole bunch of major appointments. So it might be time to check in on whether voters approve or disapprove of that. So make sure you follow us so you don't miss it. Mark_R_Mitchell at Twitter, Rasmussen_poll. Follow us on YouTube or Rumble as well. Like the video while you're there, and thanks for watching.